Aloha, I'm Kala'i Miller. We begin this episode of Home is Here at a green oasis at the edge of downtown Honolulu. Foster Botanical Garden is a place where anyone can escape the hustle and bustle with a stroll through 13 acres that are rooted in history.
I think when you come in here, you're going to be struck by the scale of the collections. They've been here so long, and you're immediately humbled, or at least I am, by the size of the trees and the scope of what's here right in front of you. You have to look up and down and all around. There is surprises everywhere. The history of Foster Botanical Garden is very long and very involved, and it came together over decades. But at the end of the day, what people can always carry home with them is that Foster Botanical Garden and our neighbor garden, Liliuokalani, right across the freeway, were gifts to the people of Hawaii by Hawaiians. The property originally was 5 acres that belonged to Queen Kalama, and she leased that to Dr. William Hillebrand. He started Queen's Hospital with Queen Emma, so a lot of the trees that you see at Queen's Hospital, you also see here at Foster Garden, because he lived and breathed plants, and civic duties, were incredible. When he returned to Germany, he eventually sold the property to Thomas and Mary Foster, and they built a beautiful Victorian home up on our main terrace, 3 stories high, and lived here until she bequeathed it to the city in 1930. Mary Foster was a very interesting person, sort of ahead of her time. She was the daughter of James Robinson, and he was a shipbuilder from London, and he came here in the early 1800s, around 1820. He has a whole interesting story about how he got here. He was shipwrecked on an atoll out in the middle of the ocean, coming from Japan, and they had to build a schooner and save themselves and get to Honolulu. He stayed. He married Rebecca Prever, and she was a descendant of Hawaiian ancestry of Ali'i from Maui and from the Big Island, so half Hawaiian. When she was 16, she married Thomas Foster, who was also a shipbuilder from Nova Scotia. Thomas passed away rather early, about 53, so she lived a long time here on the property by herself, and she was very affected by the overthrow of the Hawaiian monarchy. She was a dear friend of Queen Liliuokalani. She was the sister of Victoria Ward. She was also very upset, about being widowed. She didn't have children. And so she did something kind of unusual. She was seeking answers for all this pain and all this trauma in her life. And she reached out to Buddhism. And she befriended a Sri Lankan monk, the Anagarika Dharmapala. And she had a huge hand in the revivalism of the Buddhist religion that happened around the turn of the century. She did huge donations to temples in Sri Lanka. She had an integral part in returning the Bodhi temple in India, the original temple that Buddha sat under to gain enlightenment, back to the Buddhist religion. She funded hospitals in Sri Lanka, scholarships to Kamehameha, land she bought for Hawaiian people to occupy and become farmers. Mary's influence is still present all up and down the Nu'uanu corridor. She had properties along this area, grew up in Nu'uanu, and she gave the land for the Hapahangwanji Betsuin Temple up right off Pali, as well as the Hapahangwanji Mission School and the Soto Academy. And then, of course, her ultimate gift of passing this land on in 1930. It opened as Foster Park, and the first director was Dr. Harold Lyon. The original entrance was on School Street. H13way changed all that, of course, and now our entrance is down here on Vineyard. The oldest part of the garden is, of course, the main terrace, where Mary and Thomas had their elegant home, and Dr. William Hillebrand had his cottage. Then it had grown up to the 13 acres that it is today, and different theme gardens started to emerge. So we have a palm garden with palm collection. We, of course, through the center of the garden have Mary's historic terraces. We have the Daibutsu area. We have a butterfly garden that was started by the Butterfly Association some years ago, and it is an open air butterfly garden, not an enclosed, caged butterflies. It's open air with pollinating plants to attract butterflies naturally. We have our orchid conservatory, which is a great nod to our rich history of an orchid collection with Dr. Harold Lyon. We are now sitting in the prehistoric Glen, and this was made possible through the vision of the Garden Club of Honolulu. This won a Founders Award in the early 60s when it opened, and these are all ancient dinosaur plants. Cycads are really ancient dinosaur plants around millions of years ago, and there's all kinds of plants from the Coal Age here. And they're very interesting. They've got these crazy cones. These big cones are actually conifers. And the newest part is right beyond this prehistoric glen, and that's the economic garden. That was the last parcel to be added. So that's the area that you see when you're down Nu'uanu Vineyard Corner. And that's economic plants, spices and medicines and cultural plants and herbs and things like that. The iconic bow tree greets you still today at the door, and that was given to her by the Dharmapala from Sri Lanka, and that is a descendant of the original Bodhi tree in India that Buddha sat under to gain enlightenment. Yeah, and she planted that in 1913. But there's so many cool trees here. Some of my personal favorites are the quipo tree, which is a hibiscus relative, but it's the largest hibiscus you're ever gonna see. It has a huge barrel-like trunk just jutting up to the sky. It's almost so big you can't see it. Like it just kind of, whoa, 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 what's there? The trees from Hillebrand's era, kapok, up on the main terrace. We have a double coconut, Ladoichia maldivica, from the Seychelles Islands. This is a palm, and it has the largest seed in the world. So this is the seed inside the coconut. Like our coconut we're familiar, it'll have a big round husk on it that you chip away, and then inside is the seed. And they would see these floating on the ocean, and sailors back in times of yore would think these were mermaids going diving down into the ocean, but it was actually a coconut from the Seychelles. We were able to hand pollinate that and get more of these, and that's extremely rare. The corpse flower, that's a showstopper. That one, you know, I cannot predict it. They do not let us know when they are going to flower. They do it when they want to do it. But when they bloom, it is just lined up out the gates. We've had 3,000 people come to smell this awful smell, and it is so funny because the flies are everywhere, it smells awful, and people put their face in and they take a big whiff and they're like, oh, that's so awful, and they hold it, and then they go right back in and smell it again. And then of course, one of my favorites is also the cannonball tree, which has huge, aptly named fruits the size of cannonballs, and just the most fragrant, gorgeous colored flower you can imagine. And so people always ask, is this edible? No, it's not. It's just full of a hard kind of mass, and there's seeds inside. Down in South America, I'm sure wildlife eats it, but there's nothing in it that people would really want to eat. And when you crack it open, that's what you're going to see inside. And it will very quickly oxidize. And something that's interesting is it'll kind of turn that cream white color will pretty quickly turn a nice blue purple because of the air and the oxidation process. One of the things that we learned from the COVID pandemic is something we kind of intrinsically knew, but it really hit home, was that these green spaces, botanical gardens, parks, they're not nice to have, they're need to have. They really are essential. And when we were closed for so long and we opened back up, there were people lined up to get back in, to connect with nature, to connect with each other. And it really does restore the spirit to be able to access. We're all so busy. You know, we're in our cars, we're on the screens, and to take a breath and come outside and see things like this that you would, you know, are just incredible, that you might be taking for granted, is really important. I'm always struck by what an honor it is to get to steward this property for the short time that I'm here. I look back and remembering all the people that made this happen through over a century of time, and to be able to be the director for just a short bit is a real honor that not a lot of people get. So I consider it an honor, and I want to steward it in the best way possible and preserve it in the best way possible so that it'll be there for another 100 years.